Medical device industry is used to having many audits or inspections during a given year. We spend a lot of time and effort preparing for these audits. But with so many changes happening in the global regulatory requirements, there's a sense of uncertainty and anxiety about these audits in the near future. Hello everyone, I'm Naveen Agarwal and welcome to my weekly video update. Many of you have reached out to me to ask about the kind of questions they may come at you during an audit related to your risk management process. It's a very relevant topic these days, so I want to focus on that question in this particular video. Now, your perspective may be that of an internal audit program manager or an internal auditor or a subject matter expert who wants to be able to answer the auditor's questions appropriately and do well in the audit. And I want to bring you my perspective based on my experience training many different internal auditors and lead auditors, especially for ISO 13485, which is the relevant standard for our industry. And instead of giving you a checklist of questions, which you can go one by one, I want to give you some perspective and general tips that you can use to prepare and plan within the context of your organization. So this will be a little bit general in nature with some examples, but I'll be very happy to talk to you in detail. So give me a call or write me an email and I will go over with more details in your specific situation. Okay, so what I want to discuss today is within the context of ISO 19011, which is what I have used in my training. And that's a guideline for auditing management systems. And there are two key points to remember. The first one is the perspective of the auditor. The key perspective is not to come out with a long list of non-conformances and deficiencies, but rather to evaluate the suitability and effectiveness of a management system, let's say part of the quality management system or risk management system. Our perspective is to help our auditee and client get better, improve, so that they can continue to design, build, manufacture, and maintain safe and effective products. That's how we bring value to our clients and our industry. So that's perspective number one. The second perspective is to treat this as a process, the auditing itself as a process, or a quality management system or a risk management system as a process. And what does that mean? We are not going to apply a checklist-based approach, which goes, let's say we are following ISO 14971, which goes clause 4.1, ABC requirements, and show me what you got. No, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to apply a process-based approach to a system. And what does that mean? It means that we're going to look at the process as a set of interrelated activities that transform inputs into valuable outputs. Okay, so let's look at risk management as an example. If you look at figure 1 in ISO 14971, it actually shows you the different steps involved in the risk management system. Okay, risk analysis, risk evaluation, controls, overall residual risk management review, production, post-production activities, review of the process itself, the suitability and effectiveness of the risk management process itself. So these are different steps, and every step has some inputs and it has some outputs. We should define what those inputs are and what those outputs are with the knowledge of what the standard requires. This is what the auditor would be looking at. Okay, so this is very important to understand the process and really understand its linkages with other parts of your management system. One complicated thing about risk is it's everywhere. It's not just isolated to one area, but it is across the product life cycle. So it covers every step of your operation, whether you're talking about design, you're talking about purchasing controls, you're talking about manufacturing, you're talking about maintenance, servicing in the field, you're talking about complaints, adverse events, talking about corrective and preventive actions. Every system that you can think of, there is an element of risk. And that's why the concept of risk and requirements around risk are scattered all over the place in these regulations and standards. For example, EUMDR, which is just going to happen very soon now, has the term risk mentioned about 250 times in the regulation. ISO 13485 about 30 times, many different clauses and subclauses. So the steps that I talked about for the risk management system, you have to be able to apply them in other subsystems as well. This is what the auditor would be looking at. Okay, so let's get into some specifics. I look at big picture, two kind of questions: the how questions and the what questions. The how questions helps an auditor evaluate your current practices. Because remember, what they're thinking about is suitability and effectiveness. How well are you doing? How effective are you in your practices? And how closely those practices meet the requirement of the standards. So that's the how piece. And I'll give you a few examples. The what is specific evidence. Show me the evidence of XYZ. That's the what. So we're going to talk about the how questions and the what questions. So let's take the example of just suitability and effectiveness, right? There's a requirement that the management has responsibility to review suitability and effectiveness of the risk management process on an ongoing basis. So how question would be, how does it get done? How does your management review the suitability and effect? This is a very simple, high-level question. Then you will describe the process of how it gets done. Then they will ask, what are the criteria you use to evaluate effectiveness? What information do you review? You see, now they will get into the information required, which is mentioned in the standard. So they lead into many different directions. So how will lead into what? Similarly, how do you do risk analysis, right? You will describe, hey, we come up with our hazards, hazardous situations and harms. We have probability of harm and severity of harm. That's how we estimate risk. This is how we implement controls. So you will go through the process. In doing so, you will demonstrate that you are meeting the requirements. And then you can produce evidence. You can be asked to produce the evidence. Show me how you have done it. Where is your risk assessment? Where is your probability of harm severity rating and risk estimation? So how and what? How do you allocate resources? How do you assign resources for risk management? What are their competence requirements? Now, once you talk about those, auditor is evaluating that in the context of the standard requirements. And they are looking at evidence that you're going to produce. Competence is very big. We talked about that, right? So the how and the what questions, what I would recommend is map out your risk management process, map out its linkages to other systems like CAPA, complaints handling, adverse events reporting, maintenance service, procurement, design and development. Map out all those processes and how the risk management process links with all of them. In each one of those steps, develop inputs and outputs. And you yourself come up with, putting your auditor hat on, the how and the what questions. Okay, so I went through a very general description within the context of the purpose of the audit, the approach an auditor will take, and how you can prepare. And as I mentioned, thinking broadly as a system, as a process of interrelated steps with inputs and outputs will help you to map this out. I hope this is helpful, but please reach out to me with specific questions. You can look up more information on my website, www.exceedqm.com, or you can send me a note, follow me on LinkedIn. With your specific questions, I'll be very happy to address them with you one-on-one. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope all of you are staying safe in these difficult circumstances.